What's up, friends? Welcome to the first episode of the Touchberry Talks podcast. The premise of the show is this: myself and a guest will read one book apiece and come together and discuss them. Whether the books are similar or different, I think it'll yield an interesting discussion either way. The hope is that you guys will enjoy our discussion, but will also be motivated to go and read your own books and discuss them with your friends. If you want to buy and read the books that are in the podcast today, I'll put a link in the description for you guys. Just to give a little bit of intro to today's guest was Ozi. He's a dear friend of mine. He's a professional YouTuber. He's appeared in my previous vlog as well. I'll put a link in the description to his channel as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, comment, whatever. But most of all, share it with your friends. And even if you don't share the episode with your friends, you should read something interesting and share that with your friends. All right, enjoy. I've been excited.
Should we sync?
Oh, yeah. We can just clap one time loud for all of them.
Oh, maybe we shouldn't both clap at the same time.
Sweet. That's got to be loud enough for everything.
Yeah, that was totally fine.
No, I've been super excited to do this because I felt like the channel that, at least ideally in my mind, wanted to be a way to like teach people about things and pique their interest, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no way to sufficiently teach a topic that would go to the same depth as really reading the literature. It's like you can take a course in science, but it's not the same as conducting the research, and it's not even the same as reading the studies, right?
Yeah.
But literature, I mean, not scientific literature, but English literature, well, any languages.
Any kind of literature, yeah.
Literature teaches you about meaning, whereas like scientific literature teaches you about science. But there's no way to sufficiently communicate the real meaning of a text without reading it yourself. Does that make sense?
Got it. So
I can tell you about my book, but all I can tell you about really is my perception of it.
Yeah.
The way I read it. So I'm hoping that people will find this piquing their interest and making them want to read the books.
Okay, the books themselves. Okay, because my question, or what I was thinking was, this conversation is still going to be the perception of the book.
Right.
But your point is that the perception will hopefully lead them to actually read it themselves.
Right.
Okay, all right, yeah, I see what you mean. I like that.
I don't know. I found that I was taking other people's opinions as like, or other people's perceptions as facts for a long time. The same way, like, I don't find opinion shows as helpful now because I'm more capable of critical reasoning, if that makes sense.
I think you were probably the most efficient critical reasoner I've ever met. Efficient isn't the right word, but
high praise.
You first of all, you actually take time to think about the things that people tell you. You do it quickly, and you don't overdo it, because at some point it's not beneficial anymore to think through whatever you're thinking through, right?
Yeah.
You probably overthought it, but yeah, I'm very susceptible to taking people's opinions as facts and not actually thinking through it myself.
I realized the other day they introduced a topic in psychology. I'm in the psychology class I'm in.
Yeah.
Like the mind-body problem, and they attribute it to Descartes, right? Because
the mind-body problem. Wait, can you explain that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they basically say that like Descartes thought that the mind and the body were separate entities. Yeah. And the mind could exist apart from the body. So like, I think, therefore I am. I am embodied, therefore I am.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about it, and I thought, like, well, it's translated from French. What if mind could be better translated soul? Like, what if those words are closely linked?
Okay.
Because the soul is much more separate from the body.
Yeah.
From a Christian perspective. Right?
Yeah.
Paul says, like, the life we now live, we live in the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're crucified with Christ.
Yeah.
And the life we are raised to, we live in the Spirit.
Yeah.
It's a different life for our soul.
Yeah. So did you do some research and figure out if that was a closer? Okay. So it's still a thought.
It's one of those things that's probably got to be hard to find.
Yeah.
And so it introduced that doubt in my mind. But like that minor of a thing can matter a lot. The translation of a
Yeah.
single word changes the meaning of the text.
Yeah, it really can. Yeah, for that especially. But so the books we read.
Yeah. So, yeah, we should get into the books, though. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Let's go with you, because I feel like we've kind of talked a little bit about my book / my topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to hear what you have read, and I feel like it'll be very, very intense and philosophical.
Yes, and it's not like pure philosophy, thank God.
Okay.
I've done enough of that
You've
recently.
moved on.
Maybe not moved on. Moved on for now, thankfully. I read a selection of Kierkegaard's works a while back,
Okay.
and they were like pure philosophy. The first was
Is this your book?
no.
Okay,
This
this
is
is just a
something I read a
general-
while
okay.
back. But have you heard of? Man, what is it called? It's a book by Plato. It's like a bunch of people around in a room, and that's literally what the word means. The title of the work. Oh, whatever.
I'm not a philosopher,
You're
like
good.
in the slightest.
Yeah, basically, Plato put a bunch of characters in a room and then just had them talk to each other, and that's the whole book.
Really?
Yeah, but each character represents a point of view. So I think he wrote about, not Aristotle, but Socrates. Socrates taught Plato, right? So
Yeah.
Socrates was a character in his work, and Plato represented Socrates' views through Socrates' character.
Wait, so was this something that was... It was like live, and he just like wrote everything down, or he like kind of like made
Pretty
this
sure
up?
he imagined them.
Okay.
So I read
Wow,
a
that
similar
is-
work by Kierkegaard that
that
was
is impressive.
significantly different, but I was like, that's heavy philosophy. This
Yeah.
is not that, thankfully.
Yeah.
So I read Notes from Underground by
Okay.
Dostoevsky.
Ah,
It's like-
Russian.
Yeah,
Mm.
of course. It's like 100 pages.
Okay.
But he wrote it in response to prevailing ideas at the time that were sort of like socialist utopianist thought,
Mhm.
and they sort of hinged on this idea of reason being the driving force of humanity. Like
And what time period was this?
1840s to 1860s.
Okay.
He makes a couple of like timely references in the book, and it's
Yeah.
funny. Like the present Napoleon. Like,
Oh, whoa.
yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
For some reason, I feel like Napoleon is like a fake character to
Yeah,
me.
or so ancient, right?
Yeah.
He was around. Napoleon III was around when we were going through the Civil War.
Yeah, that's
It's weird,
crazy.
isn't it?
Like America was 100 years old,
Mhm.
approximately by that point.
Yeah.
Weird.
So I've got a bunch of quotes from it that I want to go through because I feel like it sort of speaks for itself.
Yeah.
The first is from the translator. It says, several decades later, Lenin, who dubbed Dostoevsky a superlatively bad writer, could testify that what is to be done. That's the book by Tchaikovsky, maybe?
Perhaps.
Chernyshevsky, sorry, was the author that Dostoevsky was like seeking to refute through this
Okay.
work.
Okay.
He could testify that what is to be done had made him into a confirmed revolutionary. The nature of Chernyshevsky's hero and his ideas may be deduced from the following passage. Yes, I will do what I want. I will never sacrifice anything, not even a whim, for the sake of something I do not desire. What I want with all my heart is to make people happy. In this lies my happiness, mine. Can you hear that, you and your underground hole? This is the voice of the healthy, rational egoist, the ingenious man of action. Dostoevsky took up the challenge. Though Chernyshevsky is not mentioned by name in Notes from Underground, his theories, and in particular his novel, are the most immediate targets both of the underground man's diatribes and of Dostoevsky's subtler, more penetrating parody. Dostoevsky had intended originally to write a critical review of What is to be Done for the first issue of Epoch, that's the newspaper that he wrote for, but was unable to produce anything. The strained conditions of his personal life at that time and the problems of starting the new magazine did not explain the difficulty he faced. Evidently, it was not enough for him to simply counter Chernyshevsky's argument every time, man. It gets
You're
me
doing
every
great.
time. More was at stake than a conflict of ideas. There was a question of the very nature of the human being who was to be so forcibly made happy. Dostoevsky's response had to take artistic form. he was challenged to reveal the man in man, precisely in and through the ideas of the new radicals themselves. So he his thoughts in Notes from Underground or his idea behind writing it is not just that.
Wait. So going back to your original point about perception and reality of the book, can we break that down? Because that was a lot.
Yeah. So the translator is seeking to describe to us what was going on in Dostoevsky's culture at the time, so that we have the right lens for reading. It's a pretty well-written preface. And so he's telling us about the work that Dostoevsky is seeking to refute in writing Notes from Underground.
Okay.
Originally, Dostoevsky was going to write a review in sort of just a critical sense. I think he's wrong because, an essay.
Yeah.
But instead, he goes a lot deeper and decides that's not good enough. I need to write a book.
Okay.
Essentially. And so the book is... He creates a character and does a deep dive on him in the form of essays first.
Yeah.
Those are the Notes from Underground. And then the second part, in portions from his life, stories that the underground man went through that made him who he is.
So the first part is journal entries that the guy wrote, the character, and then the next part is, I guess, almost testimonies of what happened in his life.
Stories of his life that turned him into who he was and why he thinks what he thinks.
Okay.
And so Dostoevsky sets the character up sets up an entire character so that we know, basically to give us something to relate to.
Yeah.
It's not just an economic argument where socialism doesn't work. Here's the economics of it. It's no, the man that Chernyshevsky thinks exists and is the ideal socialist, he doesn't really exist at all.
It's impossible for that to be a thing.
Yes.
Okay.
It's impossible, not because... He sort of concludes the book with this thought, but not because everyone is totally like the man from Underground, but because all of us are like him in some part. And he, I don't know, it's beautiful.
Were you convinced?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, because, and I honestly found it terrifying to the point that I was like, hey, Soph, is it normal for me to relate to this level? Because I was sort of concerned that
you're socialist or not socialist.
No, that I am obsessive in the same weird ways, which Dostoevsky can really do that.
Yeah.
He describes a character and you're like, they're totally insane. I'm just like them. And that's sort of his point too.
So what is this man from Underground like?
The stories from his life sort of speak for themselves. So I'll walk you through those first. There's 3 episodes, right? There's the episode of the bumped officer, the episode at dinner, and the episode with the prostitute. Her name is Eliza, I think. But the bumped officer is pretty interesting, although the prostitute is more interesting. I'll skip the middle because it only serves to set up the prostitute, I think. Right. Yeah. Basically, he is wandering around in, I think, the hay market. It's the cheap side of town in St. Petersburg, and sees someone get thrown out the window of a bar sort of late at night, and he's like, wow, that's so cool. It's so literary. And he's
that's his thought process. Okay.
And so he gets sort of obsessed with it, and he's like, my life is so boring. I want to be thrown out the window of a bar really badly. So he goes in and is vaguely thinking about starting a fight, and a police sergeant comes through and he's standing in his way. The sergeant just kind of touches him and moves him out of the way and passes by without saying anything. And so of course it hurts the underground man's pride really deeply, but he obsesses over it for months and months, to the point that when he sees him around town, he follows him,
the officer,
and finds out the guy's name, and then finds out all the places he frequents. And it gets to the point where he's he finds out that the man is leaving town. And so he's I have to get even with him before he leaves. I have to get even.
So did this officer do anything wrong?
No.
He just moved him.
Yeah, he
Okay.
treated the underground man as less than his equal, right? And so the underground man just gets obsessed with it.
Okay. Wait.
He doesn't have a name either. That's why I keep calling him that.
Wait. Less than his equal in what sense?
In the sense that if he regarded him as his equal, he would have asked him to move or apologized for just bumping him, right?
Got it.
But the underground man gets to the point where he goes and buys new clothes to look good for the occasion, and then sets up this scenario where he's going to pass by him in the market and bump into him and not, like, get out of his way. And he tries over and over and over. And only the day before the man is going to leave, he closes his eyes and says a prayer and bumps into him. And it's, like, extreme validation to him. He's like, I am his equal. I've made myself his equal before he left. Like, everything is right in the world. That's how egotistical he is.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So this all started just from the bump with the officer.
It all started from the officer scooting him out of the way. He was
Yeah.
like, I have to bump into him. I have to, like, make him recognize.
He was obsessive over this.
Yeah. Insanely obsessive.
Yeah.
And the episode with the prostitute also, like, gives him a little bit more depth. He's been insulted by a friend of his at dinner, and he follows him to a brothel, intending to slap his friend. They're not really friends, but he goes there to try to slap him.
This guy seems scary.
Yeah, he's completely insane. But at the same time, I've, like, especially in my younger years in middle school or high school, I've totally gotten obsessed with the minorest things like this. I can totally see how he represents us in some sense.
Yeah.
There's some part of me that when someone condescends me at all, it's like, I gotta get even.
Yeah.
And I put it aside because I'm more normal now. But he goes there to try to slap him, and instead he's already really drunk, and so he sleeps with a prostitute and wakes up and gives her this huge speech about how she's quite young, like, obviously recently prostituted. And he gives her this grand speech about how this life is going to, like, be terrible to her, and destroy her. And he leaves, and she's, like, upset, like, in tears, and he gives her his address and is like, come to me, like, basically makes the promise that he can save her from that life. But he can't because he's extremely poor. Like,
oh, okay.
Yeah, and also extremely vain.
Yeah.
Like, incredibly. Let me scroll down. So
this was the same prostitute that his friend, in quotes, slept with as well.
I don't
was
think
going
so.
to. Okay.
I think it was just the underground man.
Okay.
So the underground man went to the brothel
to follow
and ended
his
up
friend.
just sleeping with the prostitute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Classic.
Yeah.
Story, I guess. But she comes to him a few days later, and it makes him, like, basically unbelievably angry. And he tries.
Oh, whoa.
Let me think.
He's mad that she took...
trying to take him up on his promise.
Yeah. Has he not been... I guess you wouldn't know, but I guess my question would be, has he not been challenged in that way, like directly?
I think that he made, like, a very literary grandstand because he has this, like, delusional idea of himself.
Got it, yeah.
But her coming to him in order to, like, have him save her, it makes him confront that, like, he isn't what he wants to be.
Yeah, he's slightly delusional.
Yeah, he's less than his ideal.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Although he can pretend to himself that he is his ideal most of the time. And so he gets really condescending, and basically this is like, that's what it was, and you thought I came then on purpose to save you, right? That's what you thought, in regards to his speech to her, and then says, power, that's what I wanted them. The game was what I wanted. I wanted to achieve your tears, your humiliation, your hysterics. That's what I wanted then. But I couldn't stand it myself because I'm trash. I got all scared and, like a fool, gave you my address. Devil knows why. And afterwards, before I even got home, I was already cursing you up and down for that address. I already hated you because I lied to you then.
That's awful.
Yeah. So basically, in his mind, she puts him down, like, puts him down some moral hierarchy by coming to him and proving that he isn't who he wants to be.
Yeah.
And can't really save her.
Yeah.
And so they get sort of into an argument. Like, he obviously is really angry, condescending. But she realizes that he's just really unhappy.
Yeah.
And so she decides in that moment that she's going to love him, right? That's sort of how it's portrayed. She, like, doesn't leave. And he's like, why won't she leave?
Yeah.
Why won't she leave?
Yeah.
And, like, despite the fact that she loves him and is willing to leave the prostitute life in order to, like, just to live in extreme poverty with him, he sends her away because in loving him, she set herself above him morally. And he can't be with someone who's above him morally.
Got it. So by loving him, she's saying, basically, I'm going to be the bigger man in this situation.
Although you've condescended me in such a, like, ridiculous fashion, I'm going to love you anyway.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can't have that. It's too terrible.
So it's a lose-lose situation for him, no matter what.
Yeah. It's really, I don't know. It's very, very strange.
Okay, there are a lot of thoughts floating in my head based on that. But I guess circling back, this refutation of the socialist utopia, how does the underground man prove a counterexample to that?
That's interesting. So that's why the narrative portion is second. The narrative portion is to back up why he thinks what he thinks. And the essays or the notes are the significant portion in creating the argument. So I think the second portion is included so that we can see, like, that we too could be that obsessive and could be like him.
And what is the socialist utopia that is being presented?
So he introduces this idea that the socialist utopia depends on reason, right? That
and
basically
he is not Dostoevsky, not him, the other guy who is, what's his name again?
Nice, yeah. Thanks, Ozzy. Chernyshevsky, I think.
Chernyshevsky. Okay. All right.
Yeah, Chernyshevsky was the author that sort of represented that view. He basically, the socialist utopian idea depends on man accepting only economic success and nothing else, right? Because you work and you receive back your economic necessities, and that's sort of all. And when everything is provided for you, what do you need?
Yeah.
And so he goes on to spell out that economic provision will never be enough for people.
Yeah.
So, let's see.
So that's an interesting.
Let me read this quote. The language
is
is beautiful. It says, once it's proved to you, for example, that you descended from an ape, there's no use making a wry face. Just take it for what it is. Once it's proved to you that, essentially speaking, one little drop of your own fat should be dearer to you than 100,000 of your fellow men, and that in this result, all so-called virtues and obligations and other ravings and prejudices will finally be resolved, go ahead and accept it. There's nothing to be done, because 2 times 2 is mathematics. Try objecting to that. For pity's sake, they'll shout at you. You can't rebel. It's 2 times 2 is 4. Nature doesn't ask your permission. It doesn't care about your wishes, or whether you like its laws or not. You're obliged to accept it as it is, and consequently all its results as well. And so a wall is indeed a wall, etc., etc. My God, but what do I care about the laws of nature and arithmetic if for some reason these laws, and twice 2 is 4, are not to my liking? To be sure, I won't break through such a wall with my forehead if I really have not got the strength enough to do it, but neither will I be reconciled with it simply because I have a stone wall here and have not got strength enough. So he uses this twice 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4 mathematics to represent like the way that the utopianist would think that economic prosperity is enough for you. So I've talked for a long time, so I'll get to the real heavy hitters. Yeah, there's 2 very long quotes that I'll read. And I'll show them to you too in case you're not an audio learner. So he says, in short, anything can be said about world history, anything that might just enter the head of the most disturbed imagination. Only one thing cannot be said, that it is sensible. You choke on the first word. And one even comes upon this sort of thing all the time. There constantly appear in life the people of such good behavior and good sense, such sages and lovers of mankind, as precisely make it their goal to spend their entire lives in the best behaved and most sensible way possible, to become, so to speak, a light for their neighbors, essentially in order to prove to them that one can indeed live in the world as a person of good behavior and good sense. And what then? It is known that sooner or later, towards the end of their lives, many of these lovers have betrayed themselves, producing some anecdote, sometimes even of the most indecent sort. Now I ask you, what can be expected of man as a being endowed with such strange qualities? Shower him with all earthly blessings, drown him in happiness completely, over his head, so that only bubbles pop up on the surface of happiness, as on water. Give him such economic satisfaction that he no longer has anything left to do at all except sleep, eat gingerbread, and worry about the non-cessation of world history. He means reproduction. And it is here, just here, that this man, out of sheer ingratitude, out of sheer lampoonery, will do something nasty. He will even risk his gingerbread, and wish on purpose for the most pernicious nonsense, the most non-economical meaninglessness, solely in order to mix into all this positive good sense his own pernicious, fantastical element. It is precisely his fantastic dreams, his most banal stupidity, that he will wish to keep hold of, with the sole purpose of confirming to himself, as if it were so very necessary, that human beings are still human beings, and not piano keys, which, though played upon with their own hands by the laws of nature themselves, are in danger of being played so much that outside the calendar it will be impossible to want anything. And more than that, even if it should turn out that he is a piano key, if it were even proved to him mathematically and by natural science, he still would not come to reason, but would do something contrary on purpose, solely out of ingratitude alone, essentially to have his own way. And if he finds himself without means, he will invent destruction and chaos, he will invent all kinds of suffering, and still have his own way. He will launch a curse upon the world, and since man alone is able to curse, that being his privilege which chiefly distinguishes him from other animals, he may achieve his ends by the curse alone, that is, indeed satisfy himself that he is a man, and not a piano key. If you say all this, the chaos and darkness and cursing can also be calculated according to a little table, so that the mere possibility of a prior calculation will put a stop to it all, and reason will claim its own, then he will deliberately go mad for the occasion, so as to do without reason and still have his own way. I believe in this, I will answer for this, because the whole human enterprise seems indeed to consist in man's proving to himself every moment that he is a man and not a piano key, with his own skin if need be, but proving it by troglodytism. I have no idea what that means. I probably looked it up months ago when I read this. If need be, but proving it. And how not sin after that? How not boast that this has still not come about, and that wanting so far still depends on devil knows what? You shout at me, if you do still honor me with your shouts, that no one is taking my free will. All they're doing here is busily arranging it so that my will, of its own will, coincides with my normal interests, with the laws of nature, and with arithmetic. Gentlemen, but what sort of will of one's own can there be, if it comes to tables and arithmetic, and the only thing going is 2 times 2 is 4? 2 times 2 is 4, even without my will, as if that were one's free will. And he goes on, it says, why are you so solemnly convinced that only the normal and the positive, in short, that only well-being is profitable for man? Is reason not perhaps mistaken as to profits? Maybe man does not love well-being only. Maybe he loves suffering just as much. Maybe suffering is just as profitable for him as well-being. For man sometimes loves suffering terribly much, to the point of passion, and that's a fact. Here there's not even any need to consult world history. Just ask yourself if you're a human being and have had any life at all. As for my personal opinion, to love just well-being alone is even somehow indecent. Whether it's good or bad, it's sometimes also very pleasant to break something. I, as a matter of fact, take my stand here neither with suffering nor with well-being. I stand for my own caprice, and that it be guaranteed me when necessary. Suffering, for example, is inadmissible in vaudevilles. I know that. In a crystal palace, it is even unthinkable. Suffering is doubt, its negation, and what good is a crystal palace in which one can have doubts? And yet I'm certain that man will never renounce real suffering, that is, destruction and chaos. Suffering, why, this is the sole cause of consciousness. Though I did declare it at the beginning that consciousness, in my opinion, is man's greatest misfortune, still I know that man loves it and would not exchange it for any satisfactions. Consciousness, for example, is infinitely higher than twice 2 is 4. After 2 times 2 there would, of course, be nothing left, not only to do but even to learn. The only possible thing to do then would be to stop up our 5 senses and immerse ourselves in contemplation. Well, but with consciousness, though, the result comes out the same. That is, again there's nothing to do. At least one can occasionally whip oneself, and after all, that livens things up a bit. It may be retrograde, but it's better than nothing.
So it sounds like what he's saying is you can have a perfect system, but people are imperfect.
Yeah. He's like, and it, for whatever reason, the words of this book hammer it home to me, like, in a way that nothing else can. Because I know that I don't love only what is profitable for me.
Yeah.
I, too, love suffering.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't stand to have it taken from me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I feel like people would say that they would want things to be perfect. But I guess the actions speak otherwise. And I guess that's what he's saying, that man has will, and if you try to put them in a perfect system, it almost feels like that will is taken away. Right. So they will do anything to have that sense of freedom or will again, even if it is something that's like net negative, right?
You can, like he says, drown man in every earthly pleasure.
Yeah.
But his capacity to suffer isn't being satisfied. And that's like, that is rooted deeper in us than our desire for economic necessity.
Yeah. So how much do you agree with the sentiment?
I feel like saying less than wholeheartedly would be doing my thoughts a disservice, I guess. Like, okay. I feel like he's entirely correct. And our religion, like Christianity, is modeled on the love of suffering and the joy of suffering. Yeah. So I can't help but think about Hebrews 12. It says, for the joy that was set before him, like Christ endured the suffering of the cross and disregarded its shame, right?
Yeah. So I guess my question is, when I heard that, my understanding was that man wants suffering not for the sake of building themselves up or becoming stronger or learning something from it, but more so for selfish reasons. They wanted suffering so that they could feel like they are in control of something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. To
some extent, yes. It's interesting too. He supports it with like an idea that we will set goals for ourselves and pursue them, but as soon as we get close, like, we'll destroy that ideal. Like, man will pursue a goal, but then when he starts to get close, he'll start to think, this is worthless. Like, I shouldn't have done this, and so he won't attain his goal, because it's perfect in his mind, right?
Do you have an example, or like in your own life? Because it sounds like that is something that is prevalent, but I can't think of a relatable example.
Yeah, I'll get super personal, I guess, because I can't think of anything less than that.
You don't have to.
No, I don't mind. I always, like, it's so normal. I pursued, like, romantic relationship like crazy in high school. And every time that it was, like, offered to me, every time that I was, like, close to attaining that, I, like the underground man, I couldn't help but, like, gain this massive distaste for the person that I had been so wholeheartedly pursuing the whole time.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because I loved suffering. Like,
Yeah.
maybe it's just because I wanted my will to be attained.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, in some regards, yeah, I definitely think there's truth in that, for sure. I would say where I land is obviously everything in my life is informed by, or in our lives is informed by our faith in Jesus, right? And so thinking about like original sin, a lot of this makes sense. Even if we take like my perception of it, that like people love suffering for selfish reasons, that still lines up with the idea that like man is trying to be God. And when someone else tries to be God,
Right. So
they get upset.
yeah, I guess that's a fair way to put it. Like, man will suffer when he wants to suffer, but he'll
Yeah.
hate suffering when he wants to hate suffering.
Yeah.
And so we'll hate
exactly.
suffering until every economic bliss is provided for us, like it almost is now.
Yeah.
And then as soon as we find that, we'll hate it.
Yeah.
There's a Kierkegaard quote, it's very similar. They're both like similar thinkers. We just said like, we will eliminate difficulty essentially until all difficulty is eliminated. And he said like,
yeah.
I can perceive only one need left, though it's not yet, or I can perceive only one want, though it's not yet a felt want, that man will indeed want difficulty.
Yeah.
And so he decides, I'm going to go out and make as many difficulties as I can, which is
Yeah.
what makes him very interesting. He sets the bar for calling yourself a Christian extraordinarily high,
Yeah.
which was good in a culture that stuck that label on everyone. Like in Denmark when he was writing, Danish are from Denmark, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That sounds right.
Sweet.
Or Holland? Oh, is that the same place?
I don't know if Holland is the Netherlands. There's a Seinfeld
Gosh,
bit about
the Netherlands,
this. No.
Holland, Denmark.
Anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
That's-
In Danish
that's rough.
society, there we go. In Danish
Yeah.
society, like you couldn't shop in the market unless you had basically had your confirmation class when you turned 13 or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was
To
impossible.
be Catholic.
Yeah,
Okay.
or whatever they were.
Yeah.
You basically, unless you were Christian, you couldn't exist in society. And so it was so easy because everyone had to do it.
Yeah.
And he says, like, that's opposed to the idea of Christianity because you're supposed to suffer.
Yeah.
Things are supposed to be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm even thinking about my own life when it comes to suffering and difficulty. And I think this is like more of a subconscious thing, or this example I'm about to give, but even when things are going well, I get nervous
Yeah.
because I feel like I'm doing something incorrect. And I'm not saying that that's like particularly like a healthy thing. Like I should be like, I should be expectant of suffering, but I shouldn't be like wanting it to feel normal. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like I don't think like the intention is that like you should want suffering, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's strange because it's given me, this book in some part it's set my soul at rest about wanting difficulty. So it's almost given me the opposite perspective. It's like,
Interesting.
it's okay to intentionally suffer because maybe reasonable profit isn't the only thing we need. And maybe we need suffering too. And it's like, I stumbled into that so intentionally for so long without realizing that that's what I was doing. Even the simplest example, like
What you stumbled into? What? Didn't realize what you were doing.
like I stumbled into causing myself to suffer to some extent. Like I have like a breakdown almost every semester where I'm like, there's way too much going on. I can't possibly keep up with all the things I have to do. In the fall, I was taking 12 class hours, working a part-time job, and training for a marathon.
Which is a lot.
Yeah, and I had like mental breakdowns, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
fairly frequently. every 6 to 8 weeks.
Like clockwork.
Like clockwork. But I was like, that's because I loved that, and I wouldn't have given it up. And it makes me less likely to complain about my suffering, because in reality, I love it. I can't give it up. And I don't know. It made me feel better about it. It's like, that's all right. It's all right to stack too much stuff on yourself and then be like, oh, this is really hard. Because it's better that life be hard than be easy, is what Dostoevsky is saying.
For the audio-only people, I'm paused and thinking. There are a few different routes I can take what you just said. Did you feel guilty for always putting too much on your plate?
Only when I made it other people's problem, I think. It
In
makes
what
it
sense?
like, it's difficult for me to ask for help when I know that all the things I'm doing are things I want to do. Like, on days that I would do my long runs in the fall, it was really difficult for me to make food for me to eat. But I felt really bad asking Soph to bring me food because I was the one that went after the job. I was the one that signed up for the classes.
Got it.
I was the one that signed up for the marathon.
Got it.
And so why should someone else have to make me food?
Yeah.
But that's accepting love from someone else. Like, that's just what that is. You have
You're
to
an underground
ask
man.
people for help. Yeah, exactly. You can't set yourself above other people in the way that he did. You have to let them love you.
Yeah. So I've thought about what you said, that you'd rather have life be hard than easy. Now, I don't necessarily disagree, but I think I would modify that. I think a more complete way to phrase that in my mind is I would rather do the right thing that's hard than the easy thing that isn't. And that seems like a very clear-cut way to kind of live life. But sometimes it's not. Like, you don't know what, like, the clear, like, right thing to do is, or, like, where the Lord is, like, necessarily leading you. Or maybe you have two really good options and you're just like, I don't really know which one it is. One of them could be more difficult than the other. And so I guess that's kind of where I'm sitting with that.
Yeah. Like, suffering for its own sake may not have any value other than proving to us that we have this free will, right? But
in a
meaningful
sense.
Suffering is meaningful, and we shouldn't avoid it just because it's suffering.
Yeah, exactly. There's something that Walter, the pastor at Westside, said that has stuck with me. It's like, suffering is guaranteed as a human. Doesn't matter what you believe, but if you're a believer and you suffer, like, it's going to matter. Like, it's worth something.
Right.
Even if you don't experience the worth of it, like, on this side of heaven and everything. But what were you going to say?
I was going to say, like, the marathon is something that comes to mind because when I think about willful suffering, because like I was in physical pain for a good at least month of it, where my knees like really hurt, and going upstairs was not fun. But it was something that I chose to do, and I couldn't see and I guess I still can't see a way where that has just grown my faith so substantially or anything, or a way that it's provided for our community. But you're right. Like, it has rewards that I might not be able to see.
And you saying that makes me want to amend that statement too, because you deciding to train for a marathon is not a right or wrong thing. It's just a thing you wanted to do, right? And I guess that's what you were trying to get at. It was like, these are things that I want to do, and I'm going to have a full schedule, but I'm choosing to do them because I want to do them.
Right.
Right.
Reminds me of Kennedy saying, like, we choose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard.
Yeah.
Like, the U.S. could have done anything in the 60s.
Yeah.
But it decided to go to the moon.
Yeah.
Because it was hard.
Yeah.
Got to beat the Russians.
Yeah. I mean, there is a sense of challenge in there that's I would push to say, at the risk of overgeneralizing, is a holy thing, because man was made to work. And there's if you've ever had a job where it's like mindless, for me, I don't like data entry.
The only kind of job that I've had.
So you know what it's like to have a job that is just like, there's no challenge in this. Like, anyone could do this. It doesn't speak to my gifts or talents or any of my desires. And there's a holy thing about having a job that's challenging and does those things.
Yeah, I mean, I had a job where I got paid to be available in case someone needed me to work. And so I got to sit on the couch and eat and play video games for $20 an hour.
Yeah.
And I hated it.
Yeah.
I was really depressed.
Yeah.
Because nothing was hard.
Did you feel like you lacked purpose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It devoured me, dude.
It really does. Like, it might be nice for maybe the first week, maybe the first 2 weeks, but after a while, like, it affects everything. And so I'm thinking about, like, the 2 times 2 is 4. If in this socialist utopia, even if they gave me like a software engineering job, but it was like, okay, you're guaranteed to get paid 80,000, you're guaranteed to have like this home, and you're guaranteed like safety, and you're going to be making like a very simple thing that isn't particularly challenging. Like, you'll just be working like a regular job that doesn't really do anything for you. Yeah, I would get bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
I would not want to be there, and I'd probably want to quit. And then that would break the whole like socialist utopia. It's like, you've given me everything you thought I needed.
Right.
But
no, that reminds me, or not reminds me, but that makes me think about America, right? Because we're in a society where no one really...
We're in a society?
We live in a society.
Sorry, I
That's so good. No, we live in a society where through your job, I mean, most people that live in cities through their job can get whatever they really need, even to the point where I'm a student and I live in a pretty nice house, and I get groceries, and you know, all of my economic needs are filled by student loans. And when I graduate, there's the expectation by myself, by everyone else, that I'll make enough money to provide for all of my physical necessities, right?
Yeah.
Which means that, like, we sort of already live in a utopia. And what do? Like, we go on darkness retreats. Like, we lock ourselves in a cave for 4 or 5 days. we run marathons just so our knees hurt when we go upstairs.
Yeah.
Like, everyone behaves in that way. It's why everyone, like, does this. Why everyone needs a passion project, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
To make their life difficult, to make their life busy.
Yeah. Because, I mean, right now, you're doing YouTube stuff because you want to do it. You're doing podcast stuff because you want to do it. The economic, I guess, ROI on that is really small right now. But you're not. I don't mean that in like a real way.
I'm like literally zero. Yes. That's
yeah. And I've been there for like years when I first started, and so
you're spending way more money than me too, I'm sure, on computer components. Like,
yeah, but we can get into that another time. But
I haven't really thought about that. Like,
I've also been scammed like thousands of dollars because I did not know how to. Like, I had no financial common sense.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was bad. But but you're just doing it because you like to do it. And I'm segueing slightly to the book that I read, because this is
we got to get to it, man. I took way more time than I meant to.
No, it's fine. We can just like let the conversation be natural. I think I can definitely weave it in. But I read The Pearl by John Steinbeck, and I think it's based on a Mexican folk tale or story, and I guess he just fleshed it out. But there's a family, the husband or the dad is Kino, the wife is Juana, and then they have an infant child named Cayotito, and Cayotito gets stung by a scorpion, and they're very poor. Their village is really small, so they go to the doctor in town. The doctor is not a nice guy. Let's put it at that. He thinks of anybody lower than him as dogs. He does not like, I think he's Caucasian. He doesn't like Tito, or not Tito, Kino and his like people and everything. Um, all he cares about is money, trying to get out of Mexico, that area. They live by the Gulf. So they go in, the doctor's like, he realizes that he only has pennies, Kino and his family, to pay. And so he's like, yeah, tell them I'm not here. They go back home and they're like, okay, we need a way to pay the doctor to make sure our son doesn't die. And so they go out into the ocean and they go diving for a pearl. And this is something that's been in like their family and their culture for generations. So this is a normal thing that they do. But this time they were praying for like a really big pearl so they could pay off everything. So Kino finds the pearl and it's like the most magnificent pearl in the world. And they're like ecstatic, they're happy. But as a result, so many unfortunate events happen. And I'll spare like the nitty gritty details. Do you care if I spoil it?
Go for it.
Okay. Well, at the end, Caio Tito, the infant son, ends up dying, but not because of the scorpion sting. Like he actually becomes healed from that, but because the people are after Kino and his family and the pearl. They try to flee, and then they shoot the infant child, and so the pearl ends up being this like curse in a sense. And there's so much more that goes into it. But the reason why I say all of that is because at the beginning of the story, Kino, they set up like the scene. Like Kino goes out of the tent. He like listens to the ocean. His wife makes like corn cakes. He eats them. They don't have any money. He wears the same thing every day. And one of the lines says like, and it was the happiest he ever was. And it's like he's not economically secure in the sense that I would consider, at least if like right now in America, but he was way better off in some sense in the life he lived before he got that economic endowment. And so
The curse of the lottery.
it is. It is. And there's a lot of things that are layered in it as well. But yeah, the whole economic utopia seems like a pipe dream.
Yeah.
Because you're working with people.
Right. It's founded on the idea that necessity, economic prosperity is all that we need. And that's what Dostoevsky is talking about. Like, that can never satisfy.
Yeah.
In the same way that leaving your tent and eating a corn cake by the ocean can. It's, I don't know. It's so good.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's interesting to think too, because I've heard, this is changing gears a little bit, but I've heard the quote that money makes you more of who you already are. Have you heard that before? It's like if you're a good person, very generous, you get a ton of money, you'll be even more generous. Or if you're like a really mean person, stingy, you get a lot of money, you're going to hoard it and you're going to exploit people. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I
think it changes you no matter what.
I think in some way, I don't think anyone is immune to money and its power over you.
Yeah. Well, we have this system of like ever increasing wealth leads to ever increasing gains too.
Yeah.
It's like if you have $5,000, you can put it in a fund that gets you 4%. But if you have $500,000, you can put it in a fund that gets you 7%.
Yeah.
Up to if you have $500 million, you can put it in a fund that gets you 20.
Yeah.
And we put ourselves, it's sort of the thing like you can live paycheck to paycheck no matter how much money you have, and people will, like, infinitely high in terms of income. And so we put ourselves in a situation where we're like, not only do I need to guarantee my basic necessities for the rest of my life, which is what you would think we would need, but I need to guarantee my current lifestyle forever. Because going from driving a Lamborghini to driving a Prius would be pretty difficult. Like, impossible.
Which is odd.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, I'm even thinking like when I currently live in an apartment in Midtown, um, but you would have to convince me hard to move back to Home Park,
Right.
even though it's like, I mean, it's not the nicest, but it's totally livable, like 100%. But if I like lost a lot of my income, I would first try to find a way to continue my current lifestyle, see if there's a way I can fit it in before I would try to downgrade things,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
It's really difficult to step down from the things you expect.
Yeah.
And I'm confronting that now because I'm on a path, not with YouTube. I'm on a path that could create a lot of wealth for me, and it makes me nervous, like legitimately nervous, because I don't want to be obsessed with ever increasing gain.
Yeah.
And I don't want to start inflating my lifestyle and getting used to it. But people expect you to.
Yeah.
And people look down on you when you don't.
Yeah.
To the extent that, I mean, if you're a millionaire and you drive to work in a 96 Camry, like, people are going to look down on you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or if you live in Home Park and you're a millionaire, well, if you live in one of the normal Home Park houses
Yeah.
and you're a millionaire, people are going to look down on you.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we're pushed towards living the same way as everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like for you, because you're in like finance, economics, it's probably doubly as hard in that space. At least when I think about like the, like, I suppose stereotypical like New York finance, like, I don't know, what do they call them? Finance bros?
Investment bankers, finance bros.
Yeah. It's, there's a lifestyle that's like luxurious, and that's kind of the expectation, I suppose.
And to go to a prestigious university, like we have, like, you're pushed to that too. It's like, if I told someone like, oh no, I don't really have any interest in making more than a couple $100,000 in a year, which is a lot, but it's not nearly infinite, like exists out there to be made. Like, people would look down on me for that. If I was like, no, I'm not really that interested in driving a sports car or getting a penthouse apartment. Like, that would get looked down on. And if I told people, I don't really want to go into investment banking, they think you're lazy because you don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
It's like, realistically, the suffering aspect of it, the work, is the only part of it that I want.
Yeah.
Like, the money and the worldly pleasure, like, worthless to me.
Yeah. It's really tempting.
Yeah.
Seriously. No, it really is. And I feel like I'm trying to figure out, God, how do I use money? Like, it's such an important thing. It's talked about way more than so many other parts of the Bible. We talked about this briefly. And it's more than just like, okay, God, how should I actually like use my money? There's like a sense of like who should I give my money to? Like, how should I engage with that money as well? Like, there's a lot of moving parts to it. Like, how do I actually like enjoy the things that you've given me as well? Like, I don't want to like go on vacation and then feel guilty.
Right.
Like, so there's like a healthy amount of like, I guess, righteous pleasure that money affords you, and that's not wrong. And so it's weird. I don't know like where all of that is, and I think there are definitely some principles, but I also think it's like a Holy Spirit thing and a play by play as well. So that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out.
The whole concept is interesting. So I realized recently that, so you're familiar with the 7 deadly sins, I guess, right? In Christian tradition, there's a demon to represent each of them with different names. And Mammon is the one to represent avarice or greed.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, and the idea being like those 7 deadly sins, they're represented by demons because you don't just do them, like you live them.
Yeah.
You are possessed by them, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we see a lot is people possessed by greed, like really possessed by it, and that's what you have to avoid, I guess.
Yeah.
And then of course, there's a second layer to it, like what is right, and no one else can tell you what is right?
Yeah.
Because everyone gives you a different answer anyway.
Yeah.
A Kierkegaard quote about how man should basically be wary of having a lot to do with the crowd, because the crowd tends to lead you away from God. And he brings up the scripture, many run the race, but only one attains the prize. And he says like that God didn't intend that as like we all run, but only one person is saved, but that you can run as many, but you can only win the race as one. Only an individual crosses the finish line.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah,
And so
yeah,
only
yeah.
as
Whoa.
one person can you attain
Yeah.
faith. So I guess, I don't know, this reminds me of that. Only you and the Holy Spirit in you can tell you what's right to do with your money.
Yeah.
And when other people judge you for it, you have to stand up against it.
Yeah. No, seriously. Yeah, that's a really good point. And these last few days, so I read the book The Pearl, and then I visited my YouTuber friend in Pittsburgh it was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and he's also a believer. And him and his wife, they did missions in South Africa. They've been through a lot, and they're older, so just like really good to get counsel from them. Just a lot of similarities in like work and faith and all of that. And he's probably one of the most generous people I've ever met, like with his money. He doesn't even think about it. I don't think I paid for a single meal when I was there, and we ordered everything. His wife cooked so many. It was just like he never thought about it. And so it's reading The Pearl and then experiencing that and talking to him candidly about money, and then also now starting to read the book God and Money. I've come back with more questions than answers, which I think is good. But one of them is regarding like, and we talked about this too, like, do I need a 401k? Like, do I need a Roth IRA? Do I need all of these like retirement plans?
Do I want money to be my security?
Yeah, like I say this, of course, from a place of privilege, but none of it I take with me when I die. And also, I don't want to be like quote unquote retired. Like, that doesn't sound fun. Like, I would like to work. I want to be 70 and like working too. So it's like, dude, all these things that are meant to give me that like comfort and cushion when I'm like 65, like, I'm really starting to question, like, is it necessary? And it totally could be, but I don't, just because of like the time we live in and the place we live in, but I don't know.
Right. I think most of the founders of our religion didn't even make it to retirement age. So we can't exactly look to their lives as an answer.
Yeah, they were.
Unless
they were
that is the
yeah.
answer. But
yeah,
it's a difficult question. And I always come back to do I want money to be my security?
Yeah.
Like, when I get old, do I want to think, gosh, I'm so glad that I amassed all this wealth in my youth so that I could live comfortably now and not have to worry? Or do I want to think, man, I really need God to give me my manna for today.
Yeah.
Today and today only.
Yeah.
You know?
Whoa. you would definitely choose the second one.
Thank you.
I mean, based on this conversation.
I hope so.
Yeah, I would want the second one too. At least I'm telling myself that now, right?
And it feels like people equate amassing massive financial security with adulthood. And like people would think it's a phase for us to think, I don't want a 401k. But I fear that it's a phase. You know what I mean? To the extent that like that I could cry about it.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to seek security like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It scares me.
It kind of goes back to what you said about if you don't want to be like an investment banker, you don't want the car, people think you're like kind of crazy. I think the people's reaction would probably be the same thing.
When my grandparents hear this, a couple of them might be like, "Oh, you'll get over it."
Yeah, yeah.
Or like, "Come on, Nathan, grow up."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Grow up.
Yeah.
Become an adult and leave behind
seriously.
wanting something other than material success. Which is crazy. And if not my grandparents, then like every one of my coworkers at most jobs.
Yeah.
Soph is struggling with this a lot right now too. It's like we're supposed to input time and output material success, and it's not what you want at all.
Yeah.
It's not what you really want.
Yeah. Whoa. I think it'll be interesting too. Like, this is going to go on public domain, so it'll be interesting to come back to this in like 5 years, hopefully process through a lot of it, and then see where I land. Because my friend Brett, the YouTuber guy, I was like, so what do you do with savings? And he was like, we don't really have one. Like, they have money for their kids, a little bit for college, make sure they have food on the table. And then one of their kids has like chronic medical issues, so they have like money for his medicine, all that kind of stuff. But he was like, yeah, unless the Lord has told me to like save this money, I just don't. And it's not like he spends it frivolously. Like he blesses people with it and he uses it wisely. And I'm really tempted to believe him, because he has really gone through a lot with the Lord, him and his wife. And so I'm like, okay, you're about 10 years older than me. You've experienced so much difficulty and hardship, and this is still what you believe about money. There's something there. So
It's so funny because I would never encourage anyone not to save either. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? I would always encourage financial responsibility.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I almost don't want it for myself.
Yeah.
Which I guess it comes down to a decision that everybody has to make, whether or not that's for them. But there's definitely something to it. Not saving at all is
also stupid, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I respect it in your your YouTuber friend. It's like, it seems crazy.
Oh,
yeah.
No, I don't mean like stupid in him. Because he doesn't save in the traditional sense. Like, he does have savings, but he doesn't like.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, he's prepared, I suppose, for some things.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have like a massive 401k.
No,
Okay.
he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't like. Yeah, stuff like that.
Like, and I guess there's a difference between guaranteeing necessity and guaranteeing the exact lifestyle you have currently.
Yeah. Lots of thoughts.
Money is such a trap, man. Like,
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because it's potent to me, but it seems like more of a trap than the other traditional vices. You know what I mean? It seems like more of a trap than drugs, and it seems like more of a trap than sex.
Yeah.
And we live in a culture where it's just completely accepted.
I think
We live in a society.
Yeah, sorry. We live in a society. I think that's part of the reason why it's more of a trap, because it's not you're not really held, I guess, culturally in America. You're not held to the same level of accountability as like doing drugs or like being promiscuous, or at least I'll just talk about I don't want to say the church because I would definitely overgeneralize, but if you walk into the church, I think, excuse me, I'm not getting emotional. I think
when you walk into the church.
You would probably see more people struggling with greed than you would see with like drugs, etc. And I don't mean struggling in the sense of like they're giving it up to the Lord and it's just something that's like a difficulty. Like they're like kind of like living in it.
The way that Jesus puts it, and I have no reference for this, unfortunately, but he says in one of his teachings, like, life is not found in the abundance of possessions. And that specific wording just really hits home to me, because it's not money. He doesn't say money, but he says the abundance of possessions. Like, when you move, man, doesn't it feel insane? Like
When you move
from one place to another, the amount of stuff that you have to box up and take from one place to another is really ridiculous. I have to move out at some point, and it's going to be horrible because I have a complete abundance of possessions. In my life, it's not in them.
Yeah. There's this quote from a book that kind of hit home for me, similar to what Jesus said. Obviously not to the same level, but it was, say you just got back from the Civil War and you live in the South and you have all of your currency is Confederate money, and you know that like that's going to be worthless in like a few months. So the smart thing to do would be to trade most of it in for whatever U.S. money. I don't know.
Dollars?
Yeah, that's the word. U.S. dollars. And only keep some Confederate cash for like the short-term few months that you are living in the South before you move north. And that analogy is basically how we're expected to live on Earth. At least that's what the author is arguing. It's like 80 years here is not a drop in the bucket compared to eternity. So store up your treasures in heaven. Just like keep what you need for the short term, and then everything will be prepared in the long term. Like make that transaction. And that's really got me thinking, like maybe I shouldn't be thinking about like how much do I give, but how much do I keep? And then what do I give back? Still working on that. But like, how much do I keep? Because everything is made for the Lord, by Him, and for Him. So it's like, yeah.
One thing I really respect about your channel is that you don't keep everything you build. It's like, it's awesome to me that you like build a computer and you're like, I'm going to give this away. Because there's more to life than giving away money. There's giving away possessions too. When we realize that something has a hold on us, it's like, I have to give it away.
Yeah.
I've done this a couple times, at least that I can remember. I've realized like, this is my favorite shirt. I love this shirt. And I like,
he's wearing a North Face shirt, by the way. It's like gold, and then it has like brown stripes by like the chest line.
I'm like Charlie Brown. Not this particular shirt, but I've realized at one point in time, like, oh, this shirt is like my favorite one. I love it way too much. And I've like given it away to people before.
Yeah, you told me about this.
Yeah. And I didn't realize then how important what I was doing.
Whoa, that is huge.
Yeah. So I look at it now and I'm like, that's insane. My most loved possession at least in terms of shirts. And then, like, I got to get rid of this.
Yeah.
And to give away a possession to someone else, it's like, to them it's just a t-shirt, but to you, it's a part of your soul that they have.
Yeah.
When I saw my friends in my shirts in high school, like, it made me, like, almost cry at school.
Really?
Because it was so important to me. It was so ridiculous that it was so important.
Yeah.
And it was also meant a lot to me that they wore it.
Mm-hmm.
Such a simple thing, but...
Yeah. Complex emotions attached.
Give more stuff away.
Maybe that's what we should do. Yeah. Well, I think I have to be...
It's probably about time for you to wrap up.
Yeah, an hour 18. My cousin still hasn't texted me, which is sad.
You'll get that text, bro. You will. Getting hung out to dry by your cousin.
Yeah, I'm literally about to... I mean, she lives right next to me, so I'll just, like, walk over. Yeah, and knock.
Well, man, it's been a great conversation. Like,
yeah.
I really appreciate it. It's nice to have a space to talk about money in particular, because it's hard to find people who don't think that it's everything.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Hopefully this, I guess, inspires you guys, the listeners, to not consider money everything, to give some things away.
Yeah. Seriously.
Start with a possession, because it doesn't feel as hard as money.
Yeah. Something small. Yeah. Yep.
If you want one of my shirts, comment.
Yeah, hit them up.
Comment your address.
If you want a computer, comment your address, socials, and then maiden name. And any other, like, critical and sensitive information. We'll make it happen. Yeah. That was such a bad joke. But we'll keep it in. Just
we'll
keep
it in.
Bro. All right. Do you have an outro or, like, jingle or anything? Like an intro jingle or like an outro jingle?
No, you should do it. You should just say, like, thanks for listening, subscribe to Touch Beer Teaches, like this video, something like that.
Okay, this will be a video, right? Okay. Shoot. I feel like I have to turn, like, the YouTuber switch on.
All right, guys.
I'll just keep it normal. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Totally check out Touchberry Teaches on YouTube, on Spotify and Apple stuff, or anywhere you get your podcasts. It'll be there. Or if it's not, it'll at least be on YouTube.
Nice.
But that's it. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Sweet. Thanks, man.
Yeah, of course.